Once again, good afternoon and welcome to our webinar today, which is we are celebrating the Black History Month. And today we are collaborating with, NLOWE is collaborating with Laurabel to bring this webinar to us. And we have Laurabel already on the screen, but before I welcome her and have her introduce herself to us, I just want to reiterate why we are here. We are here to discuss the topic on breaking biases, building communities, and supporting Black women entrepreneurs. By the way, my name is Catherine Iheme, and I'm also a Black person, and I'm glad that we are able to bring this webinar to you and to everyone that is here today. First of all, I would like to introduce NLOWE and talk about who we are. So NLOWE is the provincial women organization in our province, and we are more into supporting women entrepreneurs and gender diverse folks in terms of mentorship, supporting them for funding, access to funding, and every other thing that can help them to start their business, to grow their business, and of course to scale their business, irrespective of whichever stage that the woman entrepreneur is already. And we have a very great project that we've launched recently, which is the Women and Gender Equality Gender Bias Project. We are looking at using this project to address the gender bias in our community here in Newfoundland and Labrador, and be able to support women and gender diverse folks to address some of the gender biases affecting them, to be able to continue their work that they are doing in respect to their business and to entrepreneurship also. So today's session is very special because it's part of us celebrating Black History Month here in our province. And today we have the honor of welcoming Laurabel, who is a remarkable leader already in our province. I'm sure each of us have probably seen her one or two times around the province, but she's a very remarkable leader and advocate for women entrepreneurs as well. And she uses the lens of DEI, which is diversity, equality, and of course, inclusion as well. And she will be speaking more to that during this webinar. So Laurabel has been a driving force in empowering women, particularly Black women as well. And her journey is not only inspiring, but a testament to a Black woman in this province who is resilient and has strength, requiring strength to really overcome some of the systemic barriers that is affecting women here in the province, right? So in today's session, we want Laurabel to be able to share with us her personal journey, her insight on intersectionality, her leadership, of course, and of course, discuss the unique challenges faced by Black women entrepreneurs in our province. And of course, we're also going to explore some actionable solutions to create more inclusive and equitable entrepreneurial ecosystem here in the province. Without further ado, I'll just please help me to welcome Laurabel. You can kind of put some reactions and let's welcome her to introduce herself to us, and then we start it from there. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to pre-apologize for those of you who have met me before. You know, I don't typically sound like this, but as things always tend to be, my voice decided to take a little bit of a vacation this month. So this is the voice you get for this webinar. And if you happen to see me out in community, hi, still me, just sound a little weird. Thank you so much, Catherine, for such a fulsome introduction. If you don't know me and this is your first introduction to me, hi, my name is Laurabel Mba. I am an anti-racism and diversity and equity consultant and facilitator. I like to say I am a mom to now a 6-year-old who tests my gangster on the daily, even as much as this morning. Originally from Nigeria, but I've had the pleasure of living in Ontario and Alberta before moving to Newfoundland and Labrador in 2011, and I now work to call it my home.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That was a very great introduction, and of course, your gangster as well. Okay, so Laura Bell, today we have you to be able to talk to us about your personal journey. And we would like to start by asking you to share with us how did you start your journey and what really inspired you to become a leader in empowering women entrepreneurs?
See, I first laugh when you call me a leader because in my brain I do not consider myself a leader, and I hear that's a good sign of being a leader. But this work honestly started from me out of gaps in community and out of gaps in society. So I originally went to school to do marketing, and I thought I would be working in a cubicle coming up with cool commercials and product taglines, and that was where I would find myself. But over time, I realized marketing was fun for me, but I really much more enjoyed community and building community and working in community. So anytime that any of my marketing contracts or positions allowed me to get back into community, I ran as fast as humanly possible into the community sector and did work there. I had the opportunity to work with VOCM Cares and then moved on to the Canadian Mental Health Association. But all the while through doing that, I got pregnant and had my son in 2019. And that's when life got way real for me. So when I moved to Newfoundland and Labrador, it was originally to attend university. And my goal was finish my degree and first flight out of here, I would go on just because I hadn't found myself in the community of Newfoundland and Labrador as a Black woman, as a queer woman. Those are two niche spaces to exist in, and I didn't see a representation for that in the greater Newfoundland and Labrador society. So 2019, I had my son, and then I realized I'm going to be here for a while. So I need to make sure that even if I'm not as comfortable, he's as comfortable as humanly possible. So 2019, he was born. 2020 was our COVID year, but 2020 for me was the George Floyd year. And then advocacy became really important for me. And so I started doing a lot more advocating, and then all of that in a ways of building community for myself and for my son. And then somehow entrepreneurship thrust itself on me, and it became okay, I am now in this ecosystem. There are people who identify with different aspects of myself, but I don't see a wholesome representation of myself in this ecosystem. So it became about giving other people a voice. So I have been very lucky to have opportunities like being a host on Out of the Fog, where I see people doing things in community. And I was like, there's so many cool people. This isn't about me, it's about letting the province see the other people who are sometimes in the background or who are just aspects of other people's stories making this place worth living. And so that has kind of been what I've done in terms of using my platform whenever I have it to advocate for women, gender diverse individuals, people who are racialized, those who are commonly considered marginalized, but I like to say equity deserving, who just haven't been given the opportunity to shine.
Awesome. Awesome. Just before we move to the next question, which I'm going to help soften the word leader for you and maybe change it to another word, I just want to reiterate that in case you have any question for Laura Bell or for our session today, please use the question and answer button and drop your question, which is separate from the chat button as well. So that just we'll be able to get so straight to your question and answer it for you. And also you'll be seeing some live poll questions pop on your screen. We request that you please help us to answer those questions as it will help us to collect some data for our ongoing research that I mentioned earlier on. Moving forward, I would like us to talk about what Black History Month means for you when you hear about that as a woman and as a change maker. I know you don't like the word leader, but let's use change maker at this point.
Oh, you're giving me big titles, Catherine, that I have to step into. But Black History Month for me has changed over the years. So for those who know me or who've had any opportunity to hear me speak, I always tell them about this time that I realized I was Black. And like most people are like, what do you mean you realized you were Black? So I'm originally from Nigeria, and if you don't know, that's in Africa, and it's a predominantly Black country. There are people of other ethnicities there, but for the most part, it's predominantly Black. So my Blackness wasn't something that I ever had to contend with when I lived there. My femininity and being a woman, now those were things I needed to navigate, but my Blackness was just a thing. It wasn't a thing until we moved to Canada. And then I realized, oh, I'm Black. And I explain it to people as I go from being lowercase b Black to like uppercase B Black, where this is usually the first thing people see and notice about me.
Mm.
So Black History Month became something for me once I moved to Canada and started seeing what the reality was for Black folks, men, women, gender diverse individuals who happen to identify as Black. It became, for so long when I was in school, it became a I was taught about the struggle and the slave trade and all of that, which is important to know. But for me, it wasn't somewhere I identified because I could trace my genealogy. I knew where my people came from. So Blackness was more than just the history of slaves. For
Mhm.
me, it became a chance to study what did it mean to be Black. I got to learn about the Black people in Haiti leading the revolution to be first people to rescind colonization. They're the Taino people of Jamaica who are Black people, but don't always connect to the journey of slavery. So Blackness for me became this thing that I wanted to understand. It wasn't just slavery, but there's accomplishments, there's joy, there's music, there's food. And it's become, for me, Black History Month, getting to see all that and show people that yes, slavery is part of the story that we're told of Black History Month, but there's so much more to Black history. It's part of world history, it's part of Canadian history, it's part of each and every person's history. There's so many things that are now, even like technology, that are part of our daily lives that can be attributed to Black creators and Black inventors. So I like, when I think of Black History Month, to think of the story of humanity and know that Black history is the story of humanity and we're so interconnected in all of it.
Awesome. Awesome. And yeah, for our audience, if you also have anything that comes to mind when you think about Black History Month, you can kindly drop it in the chat for us to see and also acknowledge that as well. Now, let's talk about the intersectionality and leadership. You have a platform, I would say, a business, which is Laurabel Consulting, right? And you do more of like this DEI stuff and being a DEI expert as well. I'd like to know tell us some of the challenges that you feel or you've seen, you've observed, and of course, you have also experienced as a Black woman entrepreneur that people face in this province and regarding their intersectionality and of course their gender, race, and every other thing that you feel that is affecting Black women in Newfoundland.
I think the first place when we talk about DEI and struggles is that people are afraid to talk about it. People are afraid to really dive into what those acronyms actually mean and what it means to show up in society with those acronyms in front of you or
Mm.
behind you or associated with you. And so, one of the things I try to do whenever I'm doing sessions is to let people know that DEI isn't scary. It's not bad. It's not the thing that takes out merits or qualifications or any of those things. Diversity, one, exists. It's not something we try to make exist. It exists. If you live in society, there's diversity. And so it's getting people to understand the different ways it shows up. When I think about my personal experiences and navigating how my diverse identities, especially being Black and in the entrepreneurial space, have caused barriers or struggles, I think of just in terms of access to mentors. It's very hard as a Black woman, if we're thinking about Newfoundland and Labrador, to have other women who are able to understand not only the struggle of being an entrepreneur, but some of the racial barriers that I face in terms of navigating the business landscape. What the easiest way I tell people is the fact that I had to change my name. So people are like, what do you mean you had to change your name? So Laurabel is legally my first name because my parents did me a great service of giving me a Eurocentric sounding name. I thank my mom and dad for that greatly. But growing up and going to school, most of my life, and the people who know me and are closest to me know me as Ifanaya. And so Ifanaya went through elementary school. She went through high school. She struggled with that name because people didn't always take the time to try and learn it. But I felt really at home in that name. It wasn't until I had to apply for my first job, which was at McDonald's. I was 17. It wasn't a job that you needed excellent qualifications for. It was the entry level job most teenagers and youth apply for. And I applied as a Fanaya. And I waited about 2 weeks and I got no call. And I'm sitting there and I was like, I know I'm qualified enough to work at McDonald's. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it is hard work and all work is work, but I know I have the skill set to handle a McDonald's job. And so I was whining and complaining to my mom, and she's like, change your name. And I was like, excuse you? She's like, change your name. And I was like, I can't be Laurabel. One, she is a red-headed, freckled-faced girl from like Atlanta, Georgia. She and I are not the same person, so I can't put that on a resume. And I was like, put it. And it took 24 hours. The resume was the same. Nothing changed. And then I walk in for my interview, and the manager's looking around for who they think Laurabel will be and who matches these credentials and all of that. And they say the name, and I put my hand up and I watch the math of this name, these qualifications, this person. And this is a story that not just Black women go through, but racialized people as a whole go through. And then if I think as I got older and I entered the more professional landscape, I've worked for jobs where people are like, why do you think you were hired? And I was just like, and very honestly, you claim diversity, equity, and inclusion. You're not meeting your quotas, and I'm your chance to meet that quota. But then with that, there now is thrust upon me this weight of I have to carry all of these things. So I become the tokenized person in a workplace who has to carry these initiatives, whether or not I want to. And that's something a lot of Black women face. And so we take ourselves out of the corporate race and we enter entrepreneurship to not deal with aspects of racism, misogyny, misogynoir, which is that wonderful mix of both racism and misogyny that we have to deal with. And so when you're in there and you're navigating all of that, it gets heavy. But then I look to the women and the success stories of, if we go back to Black History Month, of Black women entrepreneurs who have watched this happen and who have paved roads that I now get to decide I can walk. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. But because they have struggled, I get to run and I am their wildest dream. So it's a lovely way to kind of see might not be the easiest, but I know that others have done it. So there's literally nothing I can't do.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, so you give a lot of experiences that you've had already, and particularly some organizations that you had to work with in the past. And I want to ask, like, in your opinion, what do you think organizations can do to be able to address these challenges, to be able to create more inclusive entrepreneurial ecosystem?
I think the first step is acknowledge it's a challenge. You
Okay.
can't put your head in the sand and say it's not real and think it's gonna go away. We can't ostrich moment our way out of these situations. So I think the first step is, one, acknowledge if you have their lack of the diversity in your organization. Realize what diversity actually means for you as an organization. There are 27 different metrics to recognize diversity. It doesn't just have to be race or gender or sexual orientation or gender identity. It could be socioeconomic status. It could be religious status. Like, diversity is such a broad range of things. So figure out what it means for you and what you have the capacity to support within your organization. And then know it's going to be uncomfortable. Know you're going to have pitfalls. You're going to make mistakes. But as long as you acknowledge that you're doing this for a right reason, not just because at the bottom line, at the end of the day, you want to see your bank account in the black versus the red for saying that you're a diverse workspace or you're a diverse entrepreneurial ecosystem, but because you actually want people to succeed in that ecosystem and to bring them their whole selves in a way that they contribute to the way things are running and they have something to add. I think if you do it from that point,
Mhm,
people are going to grant you grace when you mess up. And as long as you take it, you make your mistakes and you use them as growing, you will be fine. And then if you know you're going to make mistakes and you're not going to get it perfect, you're going to be more willing to try new things to make sure you get it right. And so I think if you create space for those open conversations, for knowing what your actual end goal is at the end of the day, what metrics you're trying to reach from an earnest point of view, not just to check your quotas. I think if you invest in the training, the education, and know it's going to be constant. It's not, hey, I've done my anti-racism training in
mhm,
2020. I never have to touch this again.
mhm,
As communities move and become more vocal about their needs and their wants and their desires, it's on us as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as general other people in community to realize where we have marginalized people, adapt our language, adapt our processes, or adapt our systems so people can show up authentically. And you give it time. You give yourself time to make this change, to grow. And the idea of having like smart goals are very real. Be
Mm,
specific about what you want. Have your systems of measurement. Give yourself a timeline. Do all these things and recognize where you've grown, reassess, and do all of that. And
mhm.
that's how you keep track and how you grow and how you make sure you're doing these things effectively. And you're not just quota, I've marked diversity off my to do list today.
Yeah. Okay. Initially, you mentioned that one of the issues that Black women face is mentorship. And so I have a question here for you. I know there are a lot of challenges or barriers that women can face when they are trying to access mentorship, funding opportunities, or maybe leadership opportunities as well. But in your opinion, what will you say is the most significant or the most critical barrier that these women face when they're trying to access either mentorship, leadership opportunities, or funding opportunities for their businesses?
I think it's the barrier of human bias. So, as humans, we tend to have things that we're biased to. If you figured out a way out of bias, once again, let me know how you figured out how to be unbiased because that's AI programming, and even that it has bias programmed into it. So, I think it's noticing that there's this bias called affinity bias, where you lean towards things that are familiar to you. And that's typical of human nature. So, when it comes to mentorship, mentors typically mentor people. They see something familiar in them. Either you're from my community, we went to the same university, you're in the same business field as I am. So, as many things as seem familiar to you is who you pick your mentee to be.
Mhm,
So, my goal is, my hope is that people challenge that affinity bias and go for someone who they don't have that instantaneous, yes, I see myself in you.
yeah.
Because for a lot of the opportunities that I have had, it's because people have spoken my name into rooms that I have never been granted the access to.
Mhm,
People have had interactions with me and gone into spaces that to this day I don't even know how they got in there or how someone got to know about me or the things that I do. And it's that idea of community. Mentors, the greatest successes people have is because someone else told someone about them. And
mhm,
for a lot of Black women, it's we don't know the next person across the street who
yeah.
knows someone who lives. So I live in St. John's. And I'm very lucky that my community is so large that I've gotten to know people in Central and out on the West Coast. And now I can build that greater community. But there might be someone who lives out in Gander
Mhm,
needs to make connections with someone who's out in Port aux Basques. But because they're racialized and they're not connected to the greater Newfoundland and Labrador community, they're never going to make that connection, which means their business might be stalled at where it is. So the goal of becoming a mentor is mentor someone who you might not immediately have an affinity with, but you see a spark in their idea, in their business, in them as a person, and you want to help it blossom. And I
mhm,
think in doing that, you speak their names into rooms that they don't even know exist and give
mm.
them the opportunity to show up in there and do the thing that they are excellent at in those spaces.
Awesome. Awesome. And why do you think representation of leadership for Black women is important for breaking down these barriers? And how do you also think that we can be able to amplify Black women voices in Newfoundland and Labrador?
I think representation is important as a whole. To see someone like you achieve something means it's achievable. If you've never seen it done before, it becomes impossible. It feels impossible. And then you now feel like, am I going to be responsible for being the first? How do I be the first? There is no roadmap, there are no tools, there's nothing. And so then Everest seems so much steeper than if you
Mhm,
know people have climbed it before. And so
mhm,
then what role do we all play in that? It's if you have a seat at the table, scooch over, bring
yeah,
another chair. The table isn't finite, it isn't limited. And just because you give up an opportunity doesn't mean you will never get an opportunity. The
mm,
person you create space for, more often than not, is going to look back and say, you got me here. I'm taking you on this journey with me. The next step I get to go to, you're coming too because you're part of my team.
yeah. Mm. Okay, so I would like to remind us that at this point we're almost getting to the closing point. I have one more last question for Laurabel, but if you have any question for us to be able to get that answered for you, please this is the time to be able to drop it in the question and answer section so that we can get it answered for you as well. Or if you have any opinion you feel you want to share with everyone, you can use the chat button as well and share that with us. So, Laurabel, you're a woman entrepreneur. You've been doing a lot in the province, and I feel like I should get your opinion on this question.
Okay.
We've been hearing a lot about, bullying that has been happening among women entrepreneurs, and how they face it in their businesses, at workplaces, whether from clients or competitors or within their own teams, right? In your opinion, what would you say is a strategy or an advice you can give to help women navigate or address some of those issues that they face uh, in regards to, bully?
I think the first step for those who happen to be on the receiving end of being bullied in any space is f- prioritize your mental health and well-being. The world is hard. It absolutely is a rough space to be in some days. So make sure you have a community around you that is willing to step in front of you when it gets too hard, who's willing to help you shoulder that weight. If you're in an organization, be aware of what your organization's policies are. I think right now it is legislated that you have to have an anti harassment policy for
Mhm.
any organization. So familiarize yourself with those policies. As someone who has had the unfortunate experience of being in a situation where I have been bullied in an organization by a
Mhm.
supervisor, know your policy, know your limit, and know when you absolutely need to step out because your mental health is more important than putting up with certain things. And know that you might not feel strong enough to speak your truth at this current point in time, but the time will come where you can honestly say, this is what I experienced, this is what I navigated, and use that as guides for someone else and use that to hold the system accountable when the opportunity finds itself. But find community where people will support you and remind you that you are gangster, you are badass, you are worth it, you are valuable, and not just because of what you add to a space, but in just being. Your presence and your existence is a present. It is
Mhm.
a gift for all of us who get to associate with you. So remember that at the core of who you are. If your business idea or your concept are what are being targeted, remember that you came up with this idea because you saw a gap. Not everyone has to believe in your idea initially, but you need to. And you figure out how to work it, and the right people will show up in your path who hold your idea stronger than you are. I'm very blessed that for me to be where I am and the success I've had with my business, it's not always because I've thought I've got this down, I know my stuff, and I'm gonna
Mhm.
do it. I have had many a phone call with friends and family and people I call colleagues in the space where I'm like, yo, clearly I'm off my like I am out of my mind at this. And then they remind me, no, you're not. You are important, you're vibrant, you're resilient, you're all of those things. And take a break. We got you for right now. When you're ready, come back in. And I think that's that idea of allyship and accompliceness and just building community. Community is so important in the success of businesses, in the success of people and society. So I think find community. If you don't find it, build it, be that community. I said that I struggled to find community for myself. So I worked really, really intentionally and diligently to build my community. And if people ask me now, what makes you keep going? I was like, I have some of the most amazing men and women and non binary folks who are like, yo, we got things to do. So we got to keep going. And then who are there to celebrate with me when I need to celebrate, who are there to cry with me when I need to cry. And then if I need an idea flush through, they are my sounding board. They are everything. I don't think I could be where I am without them. And especially as a mom, like I've had my son's godmother who I've called and I've been like, I'm dipping out. I need someone to fill in on the parenting struggle because I can't. I need people to tap in. And so I think community is essential for women entrepreneurs, for Black women, for racialized women, for anyone who finds themselves on the outside of that like axis of power. If you're not cisgender, straight, white, male, rich, you are on the outside. So your community is essential for your survival.
Mhm.
So invest into it and it will invest in you in return.
Awesome. Invest in it and it will invest in you in return. That's awesome. We have a question from our audience.
Yes.
It says, how can someone who is white advocate and help the BIPOC community best without coming in with an unintentional, in quotes, white savior kind of attitude or perspective?
Oh, I love that question. I think for those people, start with your community, the community of like the white community, and don't start with the white community of you know best. Start with the white community and be like, here are what they've said. Here are the resources written by racialized, queer, indigenous, people of color. These are their words. I am giving it to you. They have given you the roadmap. They have told you what they need. And it's for you not to be the voice, it's for you to be the megaphone. So I
Mhm,
think the best way to avoid that white saviorism mentality and feel or just situation is don't voice your thoughts and feelings. Be the megaphone for what we've already asked for, what we've requested, because
mhm.
you're in the spaces that we might not be in. You're the people, you're the one at the dinner tables, you're the one at the conferences, you're the girls' nights, you're at the road trips. It's your opportunity to magnify and be that loudspeaker for those thoughts and ideas and requests.
Okay. Another question I have for you is that what would you say is like one thing you will say about creating equity in entrepreneurship here in Newfoundland and Labrador?
I think we have to change from a scarcity mindset when we think about equity in the entrepreneurial landscape. I think the governments and systems have made it be like, you're applying for these grants, there are only so many, you're only so much.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't need every grant. Sometimes it's better to work with another business person to be like, this is our idea. Can we collaborate to make this more successful? This is the impact we want to have in our communities. It's not an all or nothing. It's a you can go further together than you can alone. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's about changing the mindset of if I don't get it, no one gets it. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe, hey, maybe there's a partnership between me and someone else who's in my community.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a way we can spin off, but there is more than enough. We just need to stop limiting ourselves to those barriers.
Awesome. I wouldn't want to keep us here waiting. Let's get your final thoughts
Oh
on
gosh.
I'll say if you could design an initiative, just one initiative, to address both gender bias and gender and racial bias in entrepreneurship, what would that look like for you?
I think it's the privilege test. I
Mm,
think before you can change anything, you need to understand what your role is and what your position in societies and ecosystems and environments are. So, to acknowledge where you have more privilege and more access to power than other individuals, and then being willing to share those privileges. So, like, yes, I sit in front of you as a Black, queer woman, and those are all pretty equity deserving and sometimes considered marginalizing identities. But I'm university educated. That's a hell of a privilege. I'm a homeowner, and if we look at our current housing crisis, that is, I hit the millennial lottery and I'm hanging on to it with everything I got at this point to make sure I stay with it. But before you can challenge biases, you need to understand what they are. You need to understand your positions of privilege, and you need to understand that bias isn't inherently bad. It is human.
mhm,
So the same way you intake oxygen is the same way you have bias. It's your superpower that you're now aware of. You get to decide if it's a force for good or a force to let the system continue to do what it is. And
mhm.
I'm not going to judge you on what you choose to do. But like Uncle Ben said in Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. Do with it what you wish.
Awesome nuggets that you're dropping for us today. Awesome. Thank you so much for everything that you've been able to answer for us today. I still have some other questions, of course, but I'll
Absolutely.
kind of leave it a bit if someone has any question to pose for us to answer, so that we'll be able to answer that for us and get every idea that you have in mind that you want to discuss with us today to, clarify that for you if you want us to do that. Um, okay, moving ahead. Let me see if there's any question for us. Just a
Well,
second.
While you do that, folks, you can literally ask me anything. I like to say I will not bite. Luckily, we're in a virtual space, so I definitely can't fight. So please do not feel like there's any question that is too awkward, too uncomfortable. I'm putting myself in a situation where I'm willing to answer your nitty-gritty Akko Taco, either anti-racism questions, DEI questions. I'm
Mhm.
more than happy to help you with anything you need at this point.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Um, okay. Okay, so let's just uh talk about one second.
No worries.
Mhm. Okay, so I have another question here, which is about like solutions, right? You've talked a whole lot about some issues that we are facing as Black women, which has to do with maybe mentorship barriers, sometimes unconscious bias. You also talked about infinite bias as well, right? And I want to ask about solutions that you think would really work best um, in the entrepreneurial ecosystem here, looking at you are a woman entrepreneur, you work with a lot of entrepreneurs as well in helping them create the DI like experts in terms of what they can do to incorporate in their organizations. So I would like to know, is there any solutions you found out through all your journey to be best to be able to solve some of these issues that we are facing?
Absolutely. I think it's changing our perspective a lot of the time. So, as entrepreneurs, we're really good at what our businesses are. We started these businesses because, like, we had an idea, there's a gap we're trying to fill. We might not be great at running a business, that's a whole different kind of skill set. But I think when I think about the barriers that exist in this space, it's hard to come up with a solution if you don't understand what someone else's struggle is. And
Yeah,
the only way you can know someone else's struggle is from engaging with them. So I think networking is in a really important way, but doing it in a way that knowing that for a lot of racialized folks, going into a networking situation can be one of the most petrifying things you can
yeah,
do, especially when you know you're going to be one of the minority people there. So creating spaces for networking that disarm you, engaging in activities is one of, like, I think the most fun networking opportunities. And I'm also a pretty competitive individual
mhm,
sometimes. So like games and like things like axe throwing are those kinds of spaces where it's not let me sit and talk to you about your business and force you to get to know me, but let me just get to know you. Let's find common ground first before we address these really big, scary concepts and ideas and theories. So I think if you're looking for ways to help people solve the issues, meet them where they are, get to know them in their communities. There are lots of ways for non-racialized people to get involved in racialized communities to help create that sharing of equity, that access to privilege, and that access to power. Go to multicultural events and don't
mhm,
go in there with the checklist of I need to make friends with all these people. Go in
yeah,
there to experience those cultures. You
mhm,
might find something new that you love. You might find a new food, a new piece of clothing, it's new music, but
mhm,
engage in different lives than the one you get to live. And then you might see that there might be a commonality of struggle, but there might also be a commonality of power. And then how do you harness that to lift more people up? But engage in a way that's non-threatening and without a checklist, but for the joy of engaging and experiencing and learning. And if those situations aren't for you, if you're not a social person, don't by all means be forced to be social. There are
mhm,
books, there are documentaries, there are podcasts, there are music, there's a wide spectrum of ways to learn and see how other people's lives are lived
mhm,
that you're not, maybe if you don't can't find access to it in your immediate in-person community. We also live in a digital world. You can connect with people across the world almost
mhm,
as easily as you can connect with people across the street. If
mhm.
it's important to you, there are ways to do it.
Yeah. Can you share a story that highlights the resilience of Black women overcoming systemic barriers?
Oh my God, there are so many. I think a really easy one, even though this is related to the US, but I think it's super cool. There's a new movie out right now about the all Black women's male brigade. I think it was in World War. World War I and World War II, which is a
Mhm.
perfect example. And there's a quote Carrie, I forget her last name, says, and it's not, they didn't pick us because they think we would be the best. They picked us because they thought we would fail.
Mm.
I think that is a perfect example, not just for racialized women, but for women. A lot of the times we are thrust in positions not because they think we're going to do it, but they needed a scapegoat.
Mm.
It is on us to show that we got it more than they ever thought was possible, and we usually do. Lived experience accounts for a lot of knowledge and a lot that can show up in leadership, in development of things, so I think it's important for people to do that, and then if you're thinking of more specific to Canada, there's Massey Ellen, who is sitting in Parliament right now, going from a broadcaster on TV to sitting as a member of Parliament. We
Mhm.
have there's a young woman from the early 1800s. Her last name was Cooley. She was the first Black school teacher in British Columbia. There, Black women are so resilient and so rich and so vibrant, and there are many stories of them succeeding in the face of adversity if you're willing to look. And those
Mhm.
are the people that inspire me because when the world told them, no, you can't, no, you won't, they said, all right, bet.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a question from our audience here.
Yes.
It says, how did you break out? I mean, it's really hard for Black women to be given opportunities and spaces to speak or show their art. How did you prove yourself and start getting noticed despite being a Black woman?
Oh, I thought I wanna say it was really easy and I locked into it, but I was willing to make people uncomfortable. I call it the antagonist in me or
Mhm.
being raised by parents who forced me to push myself. And if I thought something was worth fighting for, I fought for it. But I made people uncomfortable. If you told
Mm.
me no, you needed to tell me why. Why
Mm.
no? Why can't I? Why shouldn't I? Why am I not qualified? Why am I not the right person to sit there? And then also luck a little bit because there were other women who saw me and said, "Okay, nah, Imma move my seat over a little bit for her." And I think that's my goal is to do the same for others as was done for me. So I have to thank people like Lloydetta Quaco of Sharing Our Cultures, who's the reason I get to sit on Out of the Fog and I
Yeah.
get to host. I get to speak at certain conferences because Stephanie Howlett from Diversity NL said, "Have you heard about Laurabel?" I get to work in certain spaces because Tara McDonald with Callaway is sitting there and works with me. I have been very lucky that when I couldn't push anymore, there were people who said, "All right, we'll pull you." And
Mhm.
so it's that build of community and build of challenging people when they say you can't. If you say I can't, I need you to give me certain definable hard facts as to why I cannot be in this position. If you can't present them to me, I am going to sit at your door and I'm going to poke and poke and poke until you're so exhausted of telling me no that you have to tell me now yes, if for no other reason to shut me up. And I like think back to the 3rd grade when we recently moved to Canada. So Nigeria was colonized by the British, so our spelling and our language was very heavily influenced by British culture. So there was a
Mhm.
spelling test in grade 3, and the one word I got wrong was the spelling of mum. And I spelled it the British way, M-U-M. And my teacher, Miss Madarash, love her now, she told me it was wrong. And I'm like, no, it's not. She's like, it's not M-O-M. I was like, absolutely no, it is not M-O-M. Mom is M-U-M. She said, it's not. You got it wrong on your spelling test. And I was like, oh no, not today. So I went home. I got my Macmillan English dictionary that we brought from us from Nigeria. I marched into my 3rd grade class, split it open, pointed to her, and I was like, Mom, M-U-M. And the British invented English, so tell me I'm wrong. And so so for those listening and for the Black women in there, you push. You make people uncomfortable, and as long as your mental health is not drained and you're not in a situation where your safety is at risk, you give them until they're so exhausted that they give you the opportunity, and when you get in there, you do your darndest and you show them why they should have said yes 7 no's ago.
Mm. Okay. For us and for the audience as well, what would be your advice that uh for someone who wants to really start from today to start promoting Black women or supporting Black women or racialized women in entrepreneurs, what would be that one action you could advise them to start today?
Find the industry that aligns with you. Find an individual in that industry and have coffee.
Mm,
And if they ask, I don't know you, why are you reaching out to me? Be like, I see the vision in what you're doing. I'm sitting at that definitely needs more voices like yours. So tell me your story and maybe I can pull up a seat.
mhm,
Get to know someone that you don't already and get to know them honestly and tell them why you're getting to know them because you've looked around the room and you've seen that it's lacking in diversity, but you believe in them and their idea and their mission. And you think other people deserve the chance to hear it too.
mm,
You might meet people you never knew, and not everyone will say yes, honestly. Also be prepared to get a rejection, be like, "I don't know you, you're a stranger on the internet, and I don't wanna talk to you," because there is this situation where a lot of racialized people have been tokenized, have been put in harm's way, but if you are constant with your desire to do this, be constant in willing to make those connections. Knock on those doors. They might not all open, but the ones that do, make sure you get to know the people behind them and not just tokenize them in those relationships either.
okay. So I'll leave this. The question I'm going to pose to you is more of like open. I want you to kind
Okay.
of tell us what you really want. I would like say in the spirit of celebrating Black History Month, right? What is that one thing you really want everyone to know about? That we want them to hear about this, everything concerning this celebration this month, and maybe something you've always wanted to, speak out and let everyone know.
Black people are not a monolith. We are not all the same. We do not all have the same journey. We do not all have the same struggle. And so if you want to do one thing this month, know that there is diversity in Blackness and learn about it, celebrate it, and don't expect Black people to teach you about it because we are poets, we are authors, we are musicians, we are artists. So we've told our story. Pick out a medium that works for you. Pick one person, pick one culture, pick one country, pick one food for all I care.
Yeah.
Get to know about it and its significance and tell someone else. Don't just keep it to yourself. If you pick a food, learn to make it, know the cultural significance of it. And then at your next dinner party, put a caveat that you might have failed on the recipe or how well it's made, but this is something that I've learned and I want to try. If there's a musician that you pick up, learn about the reasons of what the things that they write. One thing that we can't notice, like the Super Bowl was last Sunday, and a lot of people have been like, how do we navigate this whole like, I didn't understand the halftime performance. I didn't get what Kendrick was saying. And I was like, for that one time, it was not about entertaining people. It was a story being told. It was trying to show the situation of the realities that Black and racialized people are living in and the game that we are all playing. And so when you're faced with situations like that where you don't understand or inherently you're taken back and you're made to feel uncomfortable or your
Mhm.
privilege is challenged, ask yourself why. Why does this make me uncomfortable? Why do I feel like my position is being pushed? And get to figure all those things out because usually there's something for us to learn and a way for us to grow from those situations.
Okay. Are there any platforms here in the province that you think that can really help people to start getting into this, these discussions? As you said before, like go in, have some coffee, like start meeting these people that they really want to talk about some of these things.
Absolutely. So there are a couple things. There's Centra NL, which is run by Nicole Obidioka. She's a Black entrepreneur, but she works in the art space, but also she's a fantastic businesswoman. There is the Art of Being Black, which is holding an art show. So if you're into art, went around photographing Black people in Newfoundland and Labrador in spaces that you don't typically see Black people in. So the artist Brian Amadi and the curator Karen will be there. It's taking place at the Anna Templeman Center here in St. John's. If you're out in Central, there is the Canadian Federation of Students has wonderful programming that they're doing out there. So it's not the student union might be organizing it, but it's for everyone and anyone. If you're out on the West Coast, there is a wonderful Black community out there. find those spaces, connect with those people. Know that you're gonna look awkward and you're gonna feel awkward, and it is okay. If awkward is the worst thing that you feel, babes, it's a good day. But
Mm,
yeah, engage in those spaces. There are things, and there are mediums. If getting into person is not ready for you, LinkedIn, most of us are on that space. Follow a business that is Black owned. Get to know their story, then make a connection. And when you add that LinkedIn connection, write a note, write an honest note as to why you're reaching out to this person at this time and what you hope to give, not what you're hoping to get.
mhm.
Because usually we lead with what we want to get out of it. Lead with what you want to give them in this opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And then NLOWE. NLOWE has wonderful networking opportunities. If you haven't been to them, definitely check them out. They have wonderful members events. So like go to one at least once.
the way you screamed about Ella, I was like, okay.
Like go at least once. Go at least once.
Okay, so also talking about like meeting people and stuff like that. We see you on LinkedIn. Me personally,
Add
you
me.
do a lot of
Yes,
things
add
there.
me. I'm
So,
annoyingly on there all the time. Always. So send me a message.
yeah, so
We'll go for coffee.
you mentioned platforms, you mentioned some educational piece as well that they can, tap. Are there like people that you feel comfortable to mention their names that are very good with all this mentorship or giving out this, access to some of these resources?
I know Dr. Lloydetta Quaco. I don't know if she'll know that I'm throwing her name out there. She doesn't. Hi, Lloydetta. Thank you. I'm volunteering you. She's a busy woman, but she's great if you just want to have a chat and see the things because she also has the stories of youth. She works with Sharing Cultures, which is heavily based in schools, but you get to see the lived experiences of youth and the things that they're carrying and bringing into those spaces. If you're looking for Black women in those spaces, there is Dr. Zainab Jarrett, who runs the We Care Foundation. There's the Multicultural Women's Association. There's Jumia Domosu, who's on there. These are individuals who are just, I think they are vibes and they are a good time and they're wonderful and smart
Mhm.
and kind. If nothing else, these women are truly kind individuals. So, yeah.
Awesome. Before you leave us, what's your biggest takeaway from this section?
The fact that y'all showed up, because this can be a very scary, like deciding to go to something where your views might be challenged, your opinions might be poked at is very scary. So I want to thank all of you for being willing and coming with your hearts open to engage in these conversations, to ask your questions. And if you didn't ask a question here because you're like, I feel awkward, I'm uncomfortable, my LinkedIn DMs are open, my emails are open. If you just want to say, hey, can we have a chat in person? I'm more than willing. It's more important to me that people have the right information and know how to navigate the spaces than to go out and cause harm to someone who was undeserving.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. You've left us with a lot of nuggets today, and I mean, it's so much interesting to have this discussion ongoing, and of course, um, supporting Black women celebration of Black History Month. And I also want to reiterate that we talk about Black history. We're not just referring to just the Blacks alone, including the racialized people and all the people that believe in Black. This is our celebration. This is our month and we want to be able to continue that championing that inclusiveness in our community and helping us to continue to um, push forward entrepreneurship that can really make this province more great than what we have, right? um, Thank you, Laurabel, for attending this session. And we want to also thank our audience for making our time to come hear us, come have chat with us, come discuss, come ask questions. We are so grateful that you joined us this afternoon. And also just to say, if you are new and you've not heard about NLOWE, check us out on website nlow.org and know about what we do. We're all about helping women start their business. We are all about helping women scale their business or grow their business, whichever stage you are in with your business. You can work with us. We have advisors all over the province as well. But reach out to us. You can reach out to me. I'll connect you to any of the advisors that will be very helpful to you. And not to forget our project that we are currently running here in NLOWE, which is addressing the gender bias in the entrepreneurial ecosystem affecting women and gender diverse individuals. We want to say that you should stay in touch with us because we really want to hear your voice to make all the strategies, all the solutions that we hope to implement to help us continue to push entrepreneurship and businesses here in the province forward. So thank you very much. Let's keep the discussion ongoing. As Laurabel has said, reach out to her if you really want to talk to her, have coffee. If you want to chat about NLOWE, you can reach out to me or you can connect with us through our all the social media platforms or through our website, nlowe.org. Thank you very much and see you.
Just one thing before we go, I know it's Black History Month, but I ask for people that, one, integrate this into your life. So Black History Month ends in February, doesn't mean your learning has to stop in February. We also have Indigenous Peoples Month in June, so don't just use that as the only month to learn about Indigenous people. We have Pride that happens in July. Don't just use that as the only time to learn about. People are intersectional. They exist in many different ways. So life is fuller when you take the opportunity to learn about people all year round and experience it. So don't just limit it to February. Don't just limit these things to June or September. You have a whole year. Pick a day, pick a new person, a new topic each day, and keep learning and growing. Thank you. That was it.
Awesome. From the way you speak, everyone can see the passion that you have into this, right? It's very, very amazing and it's very inspiring, I must say. Thank you very much. For all of us that attended today, please keep an eye on your email. We'll be sending out feedback form. We want to be able to understand how best we did today so that we can keep improving each sessions that we promote out there for you to come listening to us. So keep an eye and help us fill out the survey when it lands in your email. Thank you very much and do have a great day. Bye, everyone.